The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how goes it?
It's good. You know, I took a note in my notes thing here.
But you took notes in your notes? Dude, that's not what that's for.
I know I'm as confused as you are, but here they are. and I've been thinking for probably about a week about like how I wanted to set this like opening bit up, and I couldn't come up with anything like truly quality, like enough where it wouldn't be like a puppet show. So so let me just tell you this experience I had.
Sure.
We played Zombies Ate My Neighbors for this game. And you suggested this. It was a great suggestion. It was good. It was tremendous. It was a huge suggestion. And
Oh.
I remember correcting you at least 2 or 3 times. And I was like, oh yeah, Zombies Ate My Neighborhood. And like, you just didn't say anything. And then the first time I fired up the game and it's like this swooshy effect on the title. So there was like drama. and then it showed up and I was like, crap, it is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. and all I could think of was Homer at the table and the newspaper folds down and he was like, Bart's teacher is Krabappel? I've been calling her Crandall. I've been making an idiot of myself.
See, that is fantastic because you kept saying like Zombies Ate My Neighborhood. And I was like, it's fine. You know, like he didn't play it as much as I did as a kid, you know, whatever. And like, it was one of those things where, like I let it go, you know, the first time and then you mentioned it like a second time. And my brain said, dude, it has been way too long. You can't correct him now. You just got to live with it. Like we have a mutual friend who pronounces we played Borderlands and he would pronounce turret as turrent with an N. And the first time he said it, I was like, maybe he just got sloppy with his diction, you know? And then like it was like 2 or 3 years later, and like it was way too late now at this point. We started playing with another person and he was like, oh, blah, 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 I'm gonna throw down my turret. And the person said like, what did you just say? And I was like, oh no, thank God. No, actually you've been saying it wrong for years, and I couldn't say anything because I was in too deep. The story I thought you were going to tell was how we decided to play this game because you know, we had just come off of a awful game.
So awful.
So bad. And so you threw out an idea and I was like, oh yeah, you know, but how about Zombies Ate My Neighbors? If I remember correctly, it's like it's a lower key game. Like it's not going to grind us into dust.
It's a palate cleanser.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's not a masterpiece, but it's fun, right? And so you were like, yeah, no, that sounds good. And then you went to speak with Susan, and I remember getting the text. She was like, oh, you're doing Zombies Ate My Neighbors because it's Halloween. Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm. that was totally it.
You know, and I got to be embarrassed by that twice.
Oh, good.
Because not only did she say that, and I was like, yes, we totally planned that because it's Halloween season. And then later, I was looking at the release schedule, and I was like, this episode actually comes out on Halloween.
Yep.
So I was like, yeah. Yay, serendipity. Like, love to take credit for it, but somehow, you know what it is? Like, we were so like browbeaten and downtrodden from Zelda 2 that we didn't have the wherewithal to be clever.
No, we had taken so much wisdom damage that, you know, we were just basically in a nightmare fueled horror scape, you know, and it was awful. And this was better. It was better.
So I'm curious about your nostalgia goggles, and I'm going to tell you mine first just because I can sum them up super fast.
Sure.
I had like retroactive nostalgia goggles where when I fired up the game, because I know I played this as a kid, but not extensively. This was like a Blockbuster rental for me. And when I when I fired it up, the first thing that comes up is the Konami logo, and I was like, "Ooh, Konami!" And then right after that is the LucasArts logo, and I was like, "Ooh, LucasArts!"
Ooh, piece of candy.
Yes, exactly that feeling. I was just like, I don't have super fond, clear memories of playing this as a kid, but seeing those two logos was enough to transport me back to being 10. So I was like, well, mission accomplished.
Oh yeah, no. For me, this was one of the ones that I had at my father's house, and I played the mess out of this game. Just oh man, just hours and hours and hours and hours. This was one of my like go-tos, just again because it's very so not to get too far into it, but because the levels are short, as far as like playtime, right? You can get through a level in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And they have passwords, so that way you can jump to whatever level. Like I just had a nice little piece of paper that had all the passwords on it, and I was like, I want to play this level, or I want to see if I can like get out of this level with more health than I did the last time, or whatever. It's just really, it's like potato chips.
And the game is long. It's like 55 levels.
Yes.
But you get a password like every 4 levels or 5 levels.
Well, okay, so here's and this strays a little bit into, so not to bury the lead or anything like that, but so this game is like fun horror, right?
Yeah, it's intentionally campy and silly.
Right, it's campy and silly, but they still occasionally sprinkle in some stuff where you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, the frequency of passwords is inconsistent. Because you get one about every 5 at first, and then I know you get one at level like 17, and then one at level I think 26, and maybe one in between those.
I don't know if that's a horror mechanic or if there's some method to that madness. Like it could be something silly, like you only get passwords on prime numbers, or like you only get something, you know what I mean? Or like I would even believe something like you only get passwords after boss fights, or like right before and right after a boss fight, or something. I didn't look at, because I actually did look at the table of passwords.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, I'm not going to write them down. What am I, an animal? so I did notice. I was like, it's not every 5 levels or every 3 levels. Like there's some kind of weirdness here, but I didn't study it closely.
And that was one of the things that, and then we'll get into visuals, but like that's one of the things that I remember as a kid that I really like. I remember having that moment. And I got it again because I had forgotten that it was a thing. And then when it happened to me again, I was like, oh, great. It's because you get one at like level 5 and I think at level 10. And then I think it does the weird thing where it goes until level 16 or something like that, right? They do enough to make you think like, oh, yeah, every 5 levels I get a password. And then they skip one where it takes like 6 levels. And that is heart attack inducing, because you're... Because you've set it up, right? So that where you're going like X amount of levels, and you're like, as long as I get to the mile marker, right? Like it doesn't matter how many lives I have, doesn't matter how much swag I have, doesn't matter. As long as I get there. And it was like, super psych, it's another mile down the road. And you're like, what? Yeah. I'd
love to believe that was like someone on the development team was like, let's do this just to screw with kids. Like not because it's going to be something clever. Like if you add up all the, levels that have passwords on them and put that password in, it's a super secret password. Not like no Easter egg, just like, yeah, let's just mess with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially like for the ones where you get one early, you're like, yeah, I got one early. Oh no. How long until I get the next one? Yeah.
I have seen mile markers, I think is a good analogy for that, because I have totally been on highways where it's like, rest stop, 5 miles later, rest stop, 10 miles later, rest stop. And then there's the dreaded, like, next rest stop in 49 miles. And you're like, why? What is between here and 49 miles away that they couldn't put one sooner?
Yeah, just barren wasteland, apparently. But anyways, visuals. What did you think of the visuals?
They're so God's damn charming. Like, they're just they're so delightful. Like, and it's not even just like the sprites, because the sprites are really charming, but the goofy swooshy effect on the opening logo. The font is like a super Lucas Arts early 90s like block font in between every level. The each there aren't nearly enough monsters as there are levels, like, and we'll talk about this later, but they start to get a little wacky with mixing and matching, but the like each sprite is really kind of not overly detailed, but like they feel kind of rich. The maps are a little less detailed than I think, or I guess less varied than I think they could be, but like everything just feels it's charming is like the best word I could think of. It's just like the second I got into the very first level, I was like, this game just looks fun. Like I haven't even done anything yet, and I'm kind of having fun already.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that they like because, like we said, it's kind of campy horror, and I mean that's the whole kind of theme to this is that it's kind of like they were like, well, what if all of the B-rated horror movies like in a video game, like that's basically that's the game. And I think that they never stray from that aesthetic. And I think that the game is very rich for it. So like you said, like, you get bamfed into this level and immediately off the top, the music, which we'll get into, but like, so you're walking around and there are just these kind of like shambling cartoony zombies. And you're like, all right, you've got a squirt gun and you shoot them and they like explode basically.
Yeah, they explode in brilliant fire and their skull like collapses to the ground and then kind of bursts into dust.
Yeah.
Like every death animation is that expressive and violent.
Yes, every single one. Like you are never, and this is both good thematically and good as far as servicing gameplay, which is that you never wonder whether or not you killed something. The minute that thing dies, especially the one that I thought was the most horrifying was the what was it?
Is it the Chucky dolls?
The Chucky dolls are horrifying to me because of the noise they make when they pop out of the box, which gives me nightmares to this day. No, the werewolves, man.
Oh, do they is their mouth like open?
Yeah, their mouth opens up and like they're wearing a skin suit, and then the skin just flops on the ground and this green spirit comes out of them.
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying. Well, so this is actually an interesting detail that I hadn't really considered before. So all of the monsters have a single death animation. So like the way a zombie explodes is the way every zombie explodes, and every weapon makes them explode the same way. And the Jasons and the mummies and the Chucky knockoff dolls, like they all die in the exact same way every single time. So you do see that animation a lot. The victims, the victims that you're trying to save, they also have an incredibly violent death animation where they shriek in horror. We're gonna have to talk a lot about audio in this game.
Yeah,
but
no, the audio is very distinctive in this game.
Yes, they shriek in horror, and then you see their like soul fly up toward heaven, just to really drive home that you failed them. You failed them.
Yeah,
but
they are dead, and it is basically by your hand.
But when you as the player die, it's a very simple, like your eyes kind of cross and you fall backwards, and then there's little stars over your head like you're unconscious, and then you bamf back to a standing position, and you're kind of flashing to let the player know like, oh, you're immortal for like 2 seconds while you're flashing. But I think it's kind of interesting that everything else that dies, including the other humans, have this super visceral death animation and death sound effect. But when you, the player, dies, it's like, you just got knocked out. You'll be back.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of like it like that from the standpoint of, since you're the protagonist, right? Since you're the protagonist, right? You like the idea is that you were just knocked out, whereas the other ones, the victims actually die, but like you get knocked out, but then you awaken, moments later, and you're like, oh no, I've got to keep going. And yeah, I think that, but still the animation is definitely less intense and way less visceral, but it is very distinct, It
is. And nothing else in the game moves like that. There's nothing else that makes you move like that. Like none of the power-ups or anything. So all the animations are just beautiful. It's just a really good looking game.
Yeah, it looks really amazing. And then, like, so yeah, so as far as visuals, for sake of visuals, I thought that like we said, all the enemy sprites were very, very varied, and I thought very on point to their theoretical source material. You know, like the werewolves look like werewolves. Dracula looks like stereotypical, like, B movie Dracula, because that's the thing, is it's based on like B horror movies, right? So the creatures from the Lagoon look just like that. They look like the
Blue Lagoon, Black Lagoon.
Black Lagoon. I always screw that up, and it's going to happen 4 or 5 more times. So brace up.
I've been calling her Crandall.
I've been making an idiot of myself. But yeah, no. So the creatures from the Black Lagoon, they basically look like the real life version of the big giant plastic prosthetic guy. Dracula looks like, like super
Emerald Lagasse.
yeah, crazy hair. The zombies look, like old school. Oh, what's his name? Romero.
Yeah, yeah, they're very Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, exactly.
The first time.
The Jason character looks just like Jason. So I mean, like, they all look exactly like their source material, which is campy. And actually, this is the first of what I'm sure is going to be many tangents. But you know what this reminded me of, and this will kind of give people a little peek into the time machine of George and Lions when we were younger. Remember that one bar we used to go to that like nobody went to, so it was always just like our crew, but they would show B horror movies.
Do you mean the spaceport?
I do mean the spaceport.
Oh,
yes.
I love that place.
Yeah. So basically, for those at home, this was just a bar that was attached to another bar, so it was like barception, and it was
and the other bar was themed for tiki, so they had nothing in common, but they shared a kitchen.
Yeah, which was whatever. So everybody went to the tiki bar place, and only very, very few people just knew about this. It wasn't like you reserved the space; you just were the only ones there, and so it was just like a private party. And they always had these B movies showing in the spaceport, and it just reminded me of that, where it's just B movie all the way down. So I felt all the visuals were very on theme to that aesthetic. Like, they never lost sight of it,
Well, okay, so this raises one of my few complaints about the visuals is the first, because this game, I mean, it's long. Like, it says right on the box, like 55 haunting level, 50 scary levels. The number's right on the box, whatever it says. But it's like 55 some adjective levels. Right. And the first level is exactly what it says on the tin, right? Zombies ate my neighbors. You're in what looks like a neighborhood at night. There's zombies and there's neighbors. Some of them get eaten. Like, it's, does what it says on the box. But like the fourth, fifth, or sixth level, like fairly early on, all of a sudden you're in a pyramid and there's mummies. And then like you go to a mall and that's where you see like the Chucky dolls. And it's like, okay, like haunted dolls, like I guess that's kind of like zombies. And you see the mummies and you're like, well, mummies are a little bit like zombies. And then it's like the invasion of the body snatcher, like glob things and like coming up like out of the plants. And I'm like, okay, like, and each of those levels, I was like, oh, okay, like it's not really just zombies. It's like themed levels. So it's like, this is the body snatcher level, and this is the, the Mauve Lagoon level, and like
Martians attack. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, oh man, that one's weird. But like, it's like each of those, like, kind of, like here's a horror movie and we're going to theme a level around it. But then in fairly early on, like in the mid-teens, they run out of those genres like you would expect. And so you'll have a level that's like Chucky dolls, Jason mask guys, and zombies. And it's like, okay. And then like once you get into like the 20s, it's like all of the enemies are in almost every level. So if there's like 10 enemy types, like every level starts to have like 7 of them. So I understand why they did that, because each of the enemies moves very differently and behaves very differently. Like some of them chase you, some of them are kind of random in their movements. So combining them creates different challenges, but it does crap on the aesthetic a little bit, because you're like, zombies, also Jason, also aliens. And like when that first occurred to me, I was kind of like, this is kind of sucking me out of the moment. And then when I was in a couple like weird corners where I had to use like my wicked cunning to get out of it, I was like, oh, it's because the fun of getting out of that encounter so greatly outweighs the silliness of all these monsters being in the same place at the same time that who cares?
Yeah. And for me personally, and I could definitely see that, like, that could absolutely pull you out of it. But for me, and especially the way I kind of saw it when I was younger and now bled through to now is, to me, the way I saw it was, like they are all teaming up against me. But one of the notes I do have, and I think it is in visuals, which is where is this neighborhood? Like, where do you live? Where there's ancient. So it's like, okay, so you're in a neighborhood, probably somewhere in Egypt, one would assume, because you're like a quick bus ride away from pyramids, but also a quick bus ride away from Transylvania. So that starts to fall apart. And
it's a fast bus.
But yeah, so so part of my headcanon is it's one of two things. Either A, all of these movies have actually come alive.
Okay. Because I also have a crazy headcanon, and I'm literally fingers crossed that we're going to the same place.
Or it's all in your head.
Ah, no.
Oh, no?
You're in hell.
Oh.
Or like
that'll do it too.
Or like a purgatory, like some kind of, because at first I'm gonna say, like, I'm just making all this up on the spot right now. Have not put a single bit of thought into this. So like in the first level, it's like just you and the zombies, right? Zombies ate my neighbors. You don't make it. And when you are eaten by a zombie and you turn into a zombie, this is what your experience is like. And this is why, like, zombies are so aggressive, because you're just constantly in this sensation of being swarmed by monsters. So you're like constantly trying to defend yourself. So the I can't remember the characters' names, boy or girl,
Right.
You get eaten by zombies, and then you immediately descend into this like kind of hellish purgatory space, which is why the longer you're there, the more absurd it gets. So it's like, zombies, mummies, zombies and mummies and Jason and Chucky and like aliens. And it's just like, but it makes sense to you because you're like trapped in this like low wisdom, low intelligence hellscape.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I like that. I like that one a lot. And I think it's very similar to the, like, it's all basically in your head, where it's just
anything where you could wake up at the end and it was all a blank. It's the same framing device.
Well, no, I meant like you've lost your mind, not like.
Well, yeah,
like
but at the end, the camera pans out and you're either in a hospital bed, you're in an insane asylum, or it's your funeral.
Right.
It's the same framing device.
Yeah, so they're pretty close, So with all that being said, and so it's interesting then, because on level 1, there are like 10 victims that you can save, but as the levels get higher, there are fewer and fewer victims, and we'll get into that mechanic in a bit. But that means, like, as you're slowly...
Wait, is that true? I thought every level had 10 victims.
I'm confident that a number of them, when you first start, like, it says 2.
Oh.
Now, that may be actually based off of how many... if you didn't save them all in the previous level, that you get fewer the next level is possible. But anyways, I definitely know there were a number of them where I was walking around. I know there was one level where it had 1, and I got on that level, and it was a thing. But what was I? Oh, so what I was gonna say is, so as you're going down and things are getting more and more insane, and there are fewer and fewer victims, it's harder and harder to survive. And all of a sudden, like the reality of the situation is slowly befalling you. This is Spec Ops: The Line, from the SNES era, and I like that. I like that.
So that's so heavy. And like everything in this game is so like light and colorful and funny, despite like the horror that you're surrounded by. And like, we just can't leave well enough alone. We got to make it worse. The one visual thing that I had a problem with, because we have to talk about the hitbox, but graphics wise, like visuals, the one time where I felt like the game did not communicate the information to me that I needed to be successful is, like the big gun. It's like one of the first alternate weapons you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, fires like a bullet bill, basically.
Yes.
You can use those to shoot through walls.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
And the only reason I found out is because I fired at a guy and missed and hit a wall, and the wall exploded, and I was like, Because
Oh.
there's a few levels where the route you have to take to get from point A to point B without destroying a wall is insane. It's possible. And that's part of what made it frustrating is, as far as I got, there is no level that cannot be beaten without running around in like a gigantic crazy loop. But you could do it way, 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 way more efficiently if you just blow down like 2 walls.
Yeah, no, and it would be difficult for me to speak on that because I can't remember a time when I didn't know that bazookas blow down walls. But yeah, no, and that's one of the things that I like about it. And again, this a little bit more mechanics is managing that resource. Because they're really great for slugging down bad guys, but at the same point in time, they are something that can literally open doors for you. So I'd be sitting there being like, oh man, do I want to like risk the long road, or do I just want to blow down this wall? But if I blow down this wall, there may be something else I need more later. Which, by the way, and I said this to Megan, my wife, I said this game would drive you to the brink of sanity because she's one of the people that plays Final Fantasy and ends it with 99 like potions, because what if I need it more later? And I was like, you just all you'd use is the super soaker, like that's all you'd ever use, and you die. You die with like all of this swag in your inventory.
Yeah. No, that you can't have a hoarder's mindset and play this game. And to be fair, they're super generous with ammo, so you're not really incentivized to be a hoarder for most things, but it's a good balance between just like firing nonstop with whatever weapon you have equipped and being like an insane hoarder.
Yes.
But yeah, that was my one like serious complaint about the visuals is like I wish there'd been an area like you had to do that to get through, like a big wall with an arrow pointing at it and the bazooka right in front of it, and it's like, hey, you now know that this is a thing you can do. Right. So go forward, right? Or make the walls more obvious, like a different color, because they just have a little crack in them. Like it's really fairly minor, all things considered. I mean, the world is going to hell, or you may be in hell. Like wall with a crack in it is not that attention grabbing for me. So I was like, it's fairly minor. And once you know that, like now you know it forever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. My one complaint about the visuals was it's not wildly clear when you especially with the bosses, when you can't like, okay, so there's bosses, right? So there's like Big Baby and big giant tremor monsters and right? And so you got to beat them. And I didn't think that it was clear when you hit them how much damage you're dealing, in that like you hit them and they flash yellow, which is good. But if you deal them 5 damages or 50 damages, whatever the quanta is, it just flashes yellow once. So if you go after them with the weed whacker, they flash yellow a lot, which would seem to make you think that you're dealing a lot more damage. But if you hit them like 5 times with the bazooka, they'll drop, and hitting them with the weed whacker doesn't do much, which makes sense. But visually, I didn't think that was relayed very well. And I remember as a kid not actually ever getting around that. And just, if I did not have the potion that turns you into the beast, I didn't get past that level. Like that was just where I pieced out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I when I got to because the Big Baby, I think, is the first boss, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so when I got to Attack of the 50-foot baby, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to deal with this. And then I'm like kind of making my way around the outside of the space where you fight it, and it's very rapidly sinking in like, oh, I have to deal with this. Like this is a must fight monster, because you can avoid basically every other fight if you wanted to. Like if you knew exactly where to go, you could just let zombies chase you in circles and just go grab all the victims and then, bamf out through the exit door, which is oddly reminiscent of the elevator in Toe Jam and Earl. But
yeah, right.
Right. Weird. Yeah. But like, yeah. So when I got to the baby and I started hitting it, I was like, well, I'm hurting it, but it doesn't behave any differently when you hurt it. Like
Yeah.
its pattern remains completely unchanged and it moves kind of quick. Some of the bosses are like fairly zippy. So it would be nice if they like stalled for a second or something so
Yeah.
that you could like maybe deal a little bit more damage, but I'm kind of with you. Like once I knew what I had to do and what I was going to get in return from as feedback, then I was like, "Oh, okay." But I had to sort of discern that from context, not really from information that I was being fed.
Yeah, agreed. And so that was my main visual complaint. But I mean, aside from that, I felt that the visuals serviced gameplay very well. Since this is normally when we do talk about it, you want to touch on the hitbox?
Yes, because it sucks.
Yeah,
And
it sucks pretty bad.
and the thing is, not only does it suck, it sucks way worse on the x-axis than on the y-axis. And I found myself actually trying to orient myself north or south of an enemy so that I would have a cleaner shot.
Mm,
Whereas like
yeah,
because when you're shooting at them like along the x-axis, you might miss them by a hair and you're like, how much do I have to move to now hit them? Because I thought for sure that was going to hit them in the face and it like went sailing over their shoulder, but did it go sailing over their shoulder by a millimeter or by a mile? And there's no way to tell. And this is like my one kind of mechanical complaint is if they had just made the hitbox better, I would say this game is virtually flawless for this era.
yeah. No, the hitbox is pretty crappy. For me personally, I didn't have any real issues on the XY axis. It was like, as far as if I was north south or east west, it was when I was northeast or like it. I found that firing, because you can fire while you're moving at an angle. That's just basically straight up pointless.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing that you were saying, is I would wait until somebody was on an actual axis with me before I'd fire, unless I was using a weapon where that didn't really matter as much, like the soda cans. And
There's like the Holy Cross, which like circles you.
yeah, the Holy Cross, which is definitely one of those weapons where you kind of hoard it a little bit because that's super powerful.
Totally. Yeah, and the fact that it's like, oh, but they have to be close to you, and it's like, yeah, but I'm immortal and they die, so I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And unlike a star in Mario, it doesn't just run out at some point. It runs out when you stop holding the button. Like it's something you can use. And interestingly, and this strays into mechanics a little bit, but it's kind of a visual cue. And I don't want to forget about it, is that the way I found out, or because I forgot that the Holy Cross, like how awesome it was, I forgot how a lot of the weapons work. But I was immediately cued into it being powerful because I think one of the first times I saw it, it was in a room by itself with a locked door. So you have to burn a key to get at just that one thing. That's all that's in there. And I'm like, the game devs think that this is worth a key. So yeah, anyway, so that's kind of how I got keyed into that whole shtick. And they do that kind of thing in a number of different places where they will put something of great value alone by itself, so that way you're kind of like, hey, this is kind of valuable or important, in case you didn't realize it on your own. The med kits are normally kind of in an area by themselves, so it's like you got to sacrifice a key or a couple of cannon shots or whatever to get at it. So thought that was well crafted. But anything else on visuals, because I'm super stoked to get into the sound on this one because I have notes on sound this time.
Yeah, this is, I think this will only be like the second or third time you've ever been like, yay, audio. So this feels like a trick or treat moment. Oh, dude, I have like a total Halloween aside. Sue, yeah, pretty much. So Sue and I actually went to a friend's Halloween party because, we have little kids, like it's a pain in the ass to go out sometimes, but like, it's a good friend. We wanted to go. Like, we haven't done anything like this in a while. So we do the whole suburban parent dance and we go to this party. And as we're getting ready to leave, I was like, oh, I'm going to just pop over to the snack table and just grab one of these really good cookies again as we're like heading out. And I notice on the corner of the table, there's these 3 bowls, like 3 small wooden bowls. And there's a sign perched in the middle that says, trick or treat, gluten-free, may contain peanuts. And the room was kind of low light, so I was just like, oh, that's okay. Somebody brought Skittles. Oh my God, they mix Skittles and M&Ms together. And it's like,
Fantastic.
well, that's one of those things like you see on Reddit or on Twitter. Like somebody's like, oh, if you really want to mess with people, but you never expect to actually see it in real life. And this guy walked up, somebody at the party was like a friend of the host, so it was somebody I didn't know, and he just grabbed a handful and then like tossed several into his mouth at once and started to walk away. And I was like, oh, did you not? And he was like, don't care. I was just like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, you do you. But then like, it's like, is that the trick? Like he's trying to trick me into eating a handful of Skittles and M&Ms at the same time.
Like he's part of it, you know? Oh yeah, no, it's like how deep does rabbit hole go, you know? And it's kind of like, well, you see, Neo, if you take the red pill, you wake up in a hospital. But if you take the blue pill, you wake up in a hospital also, but way worse condition. Which is actually how the Matrix should have gone. But now we're getting, I'm taking this way further off topic. Yeah. So the sound in this game. Okay. So first, music. I think the music personally is very catchy in that I have been humming it to myself for the last several weeks.
It's so good. Again,
yeah.
Charming, right? Like it's just, it's hummable, it's enjoyable, it's on theme. Like it's just, it suffers from only the one and only problem that the visuals suffer from, which is because the game is so long, the music does start to get repetitive. Yeah. But it's like, what a great problem to have where you're like, I love these, 5-6 songs, however many it is. Please give me 6 more.
Yeah. And I think that the music itself is very, like you said, it's very on theme. It's very, because it's very kind of fun and campy, but then it'll kind of hit these kind of horror-esque notes, where it goes like do 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 do, like that kind of where you're like, ooh, no, I'm in a spooky movie, but it's I don't know, it's kind of fun, kind of enjoyable, So I think that it sets the tone perfectly, from the moment that you load up the game, it gives you like the horror thing, but then the music when you first get in is just kind of upbeat, kind of peppy. It's like, hey, yeah, kill some zombies.
It's very I think all of the movie monsters that they're drawing from, the music, the whole kind of thing is very like 50s to 80s. Not even just like horror, but just like movie monsters. Because it's like a lot of sci-fi also has horror elements. And there's a lot of sci-fi stuff in here. So it's like that kind of like 70s, 80s version of the future where like all the aliens are like big heads and they seem to want more or less what humans want, but they're angry about it. And like it's like a very that time in history version of monsters and sci-fi and what's spooky, but you're the plucky teenager with a water gun filled with I don't know what. And
holy water.
I guess. Why does it also affect aliens? Because you're in hell.
Yep. There you go. See, it all adds up.
Yeah, but like all of the music is, it's spooky and thematic without being too disempowering. But it's upbeat, like you're the plucky teenager who's going to save the day without being too empowering. Like it's that's a tough balance to strike.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they do a great job, like you said, and we can get into it more in mechanics, but they do a great job without making you feel terrified, making you feel, but also not empowered, because you'll be walking around, you're like, yeah, man, I got my arsenal and got all this sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you'll hear a Chucky doll come screaming out of its box. And you're like, oh my good pity God, what? Geez, why is this happening to me? And you're like, oh, okay, all right, it's fine. And all of a sudden here, and it's just like a chainsaw monster. You're like, oh God, and you run, and then you start dropping clowns behind you, like the little clown blow up doll decoys.
Yeah,
and that's
the
hilarious.
punchy doll. It is hilarious.
and so you're like, I don't, so it just does such a great job conflating like weird hilarity with like kind of terror. So the way I kind of look at it is it hits that same note as like a kind of a low budget haunted house, where it's like you're going in there to be scared, so it's just kind of like, oh, it's all fun, and oh my goodness, oh no, but it's still fun, but yeah, I don't know, I
think it's the difference between being startled and being scared. Like
Yeah.
There are things in this game that are startling, but they're haunted house startling, right? Like you would describe it as like, oh, I was so scared, but like you have a big smile on your face and you're like getting in line to go through again because like, oh, it was so scary, like I can't wait to go again. Whereas like real fear, like I've played a handful of games because horror is not really my thing, but like I've played a handful of games and seen a handful of like shows and movies where by the end of it I was like, I didn't enjoy that. Like
Right.
that has taken time off of my life. And
Yeah.
and there's none of that in this. None of this is like where at the end you put the controller down and you're like shaking.
Yeah. We're like, oh my God. I am so
Except
scared right now.
except the Chucky laugh or scream thing. Like that's pretty haunting.
The Chucky laugh sticks with me, man. Like, oh God, it just because especially because they are so okay. So the three for me, the big three is the mwahaha that it does both at the beginning and when Dracula shows up. The Chucky dolls and the Jason chainsaw. But the reason why all three of those are very audio intense, but the enemies are very mechanically difficult.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, so they're signifying bad tidings.
Yeah, so I mean that's the thing is if the Chucky doll mwahaha if I can't like
that really sucks the fear out of it.
Yeah. I should probably stop saying it. I should just say the laugh because I'm not doing it justice. Or I could just say right now and make you work it in to the thing. So that way
there it is. The whole time we were playing this game, I was like, man, he's gonna just be swearing up a storm, so I have to use video game sound effects to censor him.
Anyways, oh, this is true. But anyways, so if that noise that the audience is now familiar with happened, but the enemy wasn't mechanically difficult, it'd be irritating because it's like, oh my God, I get it. Like, yeah, there's Chucky dolls. I'm going to dispatch 100 of them, and I keep hearing this noise. But because it's both coupled with it's a terrifying noise that's coupled with a difficult mechanic, like it is terror inducing because it's like, oh God, that was a scary sound. And I now have to deal with this enemy that's probably going to wreck me, you know? So again, well done. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean the sound is I would venture that a lot of people would probably praise LucasArts games for this exact thing, like visuals, mechanics, and audio playing nicely to each other. Because I mean, if you're a pedant, you would be like, oh, well, you just described a well-made game, schmuck. But like, but I mean, you can have like Tetris is a good example. Like Tetris is a really well-made game. You can play that game equally well muted. Like you do not need the music or the sound. So you can, in extreme circumstances, completely abandon visuals or completely abandon sound. I mean, think about like a text-based adventure, right? Like fun game, no sound, no visuals other than, you know, the text, but does that count? So like the LucasArts games that I've played always were, you know, cohesive in this way. And the one pushback that I'll give you, just because I hated the hitbox so much, is the chainsaw guys. I did start to get the Jasons, I guess. We've said Jason like 40 times. It's not. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Is it?
Jason used a knife. Didn't he?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, we're definitely showing like a lack of horror clout.
Someone is yelling at their iPod right now.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll do the legwork afterwards. Check the show notes.
Yeah, no, we totally will, and then we'll go back and re-record all these sessions. None of this will ever air. So anyway, the hockey mask chainsaw guy. When he gets close enough to cause you damage, he does like a little spinny move, which I gotta say, you don't really need a lot of finesse for a chainsaw weapon, so that's probably a safe way to attack someone, right? Just like spin in a circle. But
nothing sells crazy. Sorry, I'm just picturing like if there was a big dude coming after me with a chainsaw, and he got within swinging distance, and instead of just like bringing it up and then down at me, like grabbed it by the end and then started "I love you, Jack" on the Titanic, twirling it around. I wouldn't know really what to do. I mean, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like his entire demeanor is off-putting. But he when he gets close enough to you and he does his little "I love you, Jack" spin,
Mhm.
his hitbox changes as he's spinning because he's a wider target at, like, let's say east and west than he is at north and south. So like it matters where you are positioned because you, and which, I mean, yeah, he's spinning. Like people are probably thinking like, yeah, he's spinning, but like it's annoying because he's spinning really fast and he has a huge reach around him, and he can immediately exit that animation, take like 2 steps, and then re-enter that animation. So if you let him get right on top of you, you are boned.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times where I heard that noise and I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God, which is the feeling you want. And then he would like come through a bush or something and get right next to me. And then you continue to hear that noise, but I'm no longer feeling panicked. I'm now annoyed. And so the amount of time I spent hearing that noise and feeling annoyed was greater than the amount of time I spent feeling that noise and getting like a thrill of running from the monster. But
Interesting.
you know, I mean, that's like an extreme case, kind of influenced by my skill level, but and the crappy hitbox.
Yeah. No, the hitbox is definitely garbage. For me though, I didn't even know that you could kill the chainsaw dudes until this time I played. Like as a kid, I never all I did with the chainsaw dudes was I would occasionally hit them with like a bazooka to knock them down, which is just a statement that you don't get to say a whole lot.
Yeah.
And the fire extinguisher to freeze them. But in my mind, like they could not be beaten, and nor were you supposed to. You know, like you were just like so like you said, basically, is if they got close enough to do that swing animation, you had already screwed up. But what I really loved doing, and this definitely wait, I want to just say this one note, and then because this strays into the mechanics. But, so opening things makes the cupboard opening noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, opening everything makes that noise, including opening piles of sand in the pyramid levels. And I thought that was kind of stupid.
It is a little stupid.
Because it makes like this thunk of like you opening a cabinet. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not what sand sounds like when you move it away. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I noticed that immediately because another game we played that is one of the greatest games ever made also did this lazy sound trick, which is Chrono Trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you open in Chrono Trigger makes the same clicky noise. So it's like, 10,000-year-old chest made out of like banana palm fronds makes a clicky noise. Like gigantic, stone door that you have to open, using this magic key from Aliens, clicky noise. Like it's just, and it's super fast, right? Like you can understand why the I don't know, let's call them Foley artists, why the Foley artists don't want to make 1,000 different clicky noises for like, oh, well, when a sand thing opens, it makes a sand clicky noise. And when a wooden thing opens, it makes a wooden clicky noise. But you do notice it. Like you touch the pile of sand and it parts to like reveal the wall or to reveal a secret door or something. And it goes click. Like, what?
And you're like, that doesn't sound right. But no, now to for mechanics, to go back to what we were talking about before. So one of the things I loved doing with the Jason guys, I'm just going to call them Jason guys, with the Jason guys is kiting them in a way to knock down walls for me was super satisfying.
Yes. And the thing is, before I took down my first one, and because I didn't know I could knock down walls myself, I thought that was their purpose. Like, the challenge of these things is that I need them, but they super want to murder me.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? So I was making the game way more difficult than I had to just because I thought I was being super clever.
Well, and that's to me though a great mechanic that they put in, which is that, especially on some of the higher levels where the way you would have to get from point A to point B without being able to knock down walls is just insane. You know, like again, possible, but really outside the realm of what you would consider normal. They'll throw in the chainsaw guys, so you can just kind of kite them around and be like, okay, knock down this wall for me. And the reason why I figured that they were there is, I mean, for people who can't figure out their things. I mean, no judgments, but those people are idiots.
Yeah, yep. Agreed completely.
But is also in case you just didn't have the ammo, like in case you just it did not conserve that resource, then you have a fallback for that. So
Well, and I feel like by the end of that level, and I mean, like jokes aside, like I'll admit I probably should have picked up on this, but by the end of that level, what you need to firmly understand, whether or not you can destroy walls, walls are a thing that can be destroyed,
right.
which should have led me to like, maybe there are ways I can destroy walls. Especially because one of the other mechanics that I liked is that there are some damage causing things that are like not enemies. So like in the body snatchers level that has the evil plants, like there's evil plants, and if you touch them you get hurt, but they don't do anything.
Yeah, right.
Like they don't come after you, but you can like weed whack them, and if you weed whack all of them, they stop growing, and then like that area is now easier to traverse if you have to backtrack through it. So like there's the blobby things, they're like red. I'm actually not sure what those are from. Oh wait, you know what it is?
I think.
Well, you're probably
not that, but yeah.
But I didn't the monster in The Thing move like that?
Maybe.
Oh crap. There's I want to say there's a Stephen King book turned movie where the monster is like a pile of goo that moves in like a super scary way.
We really needed Aaron the guest star on this.
Yeah, we did.
Hey, she's gonna listen to this podcast and just claw her eyes out.
Seriously. But those things, like, there's a very good chance I just didn't have the right weapon. But am I right that like you can't kill those things?
To the best of my knowledge, no, you cannot. You can freeze them, but you cannot kill them. But actually, one of the interesting things about those that I think, because they're just, there's no way we're going to touch on all of them, but there are so many mechanics that play so interestingly with one another that I think is fascinating. So those things shoot balls of goo up into the air, and if you are underneath them, if you're not moving around enough, it'll hit you or a victim on the head. If it hits a victim on the head, you get like a 5-second count, and then the victim dies, which is great because it really increases tension, because you're like, I have to get to them right now. And I know at one point I knocked down a wall that I was planning on walking around because they got hit, and I was like, I got to do this, which I thought added some fun dramatic tension. But there was another time when I got hit with one. Now it will hit you. It stays on you for about 10 seconds ish.
Yeah, but it seems like a goddamn eternity.
It does. And it damages you 3 times, right? That is actually a much, much slower rate than walking across the briars and stuff, right? That you can weed whack away.
Well, but you also, while you have the stuff on your head, you can't use your tools.
You can't, but you also can't take damage from other sources.
Oh.
So, yeah. And this is how I figured this out. It's like I got hit with that thing, and I just happened across a briar, and it didn't damage me. And I was like, huh. And so I used that to actually traverse all those briars because I didn't have any weed whacker, and I actually took a lot less damage by using that to my advantage somehow. So that was just kind of like a weird, like, huh, okay, though, those two mechanics can play interestingly together, and they did it in a way where I didn't feel cheated. I felt clever.
Yeah, that seems like someone might have recognized, like, oh, when you have the goo on you, you are completely powerless. And somebody else was just like, well, okay, you just can't take damage from other sources while you're like that. So enemies might like amass around you, like right. They're following you because you can't kill them, but they also can't kill you. Like, as long as the thing is on your head, you are immortal,
Right. Which, I mean, again, considering how fast you can take damage, there were times where I was like, I kind of want the thing on my head because, and the way I kind of viewed it was like you've been hit by the slime, so like they don't recognize you as human anymore. But yeah, I thought like stuff like that was really clever. One of the things that one of my first notes for mechanics, just off the top, is I do love that you just get bazookas, that there's just bazooka and bazooka ammunition just lying around everywhere, which further supports either insanity or hell.
Well, I assume that because one of the victims is like generic army man number 46.
Yeah.
So and the bazooka ammo is often near them, not always, but like I assume it's like, oh, they dropped this.
Yeah, and I do like that there were army dudes around because that does kind of sell the idea of, the army guys came and then lost their minds because only you, the plucky teenager, have the metal that it takes to deal with all of this stuff. But I do like, especially in things like this when they do address it's like where is the military? Like this has clearly gotten way out of hand. Unlike Mortal Kombat 2, where where you are forced to constantly wonder where the military is. Like they addressed it. The military came and lost their minds, and then now it's up to you. So
Yeah. So you having played this a lot more than I did, I have a question about the like inventory management. So on my first playthrough, I actually got further than I expected. Before I was like, okay, I'm frustrated enough that I want to like take a minute to like soak in the skills I've learned and like come back fresh. And I got to like the high teens, like 16, 17, somewhere in there. And I ended up with, I don't know, 9 or 10 different weapons and like 6 or 7 different support items, specials.
Yeah.
And scrolling through them is super annoying. And
Yes.
I got used to it. I don't know how you would maybe make that work faster, because this seems like it's not the best way to do it, but it is the best trade-off of you can only scroll in one direction, so you can never ever forget which direction you're scrolling in.
Right.
The things are always in the same order. So like if you have A, B, and C, they always go in that order. And if you only have A and C, then it still goes in A, B, C order.
Right.
So there's enough consistency and predictability that you can understand it, but it's also a steep enough mountain that I was like, inventory management is a skill I have to master, because if I have my squirt gun out and I'm being chased by like one of the Chuckies or like one of the Jason guys, which I'm fairly sure that's wrong. But if I need a specific weapon and it's not the weapon I have equipped, I have to get to that weapon as quickly as possible, but don't overshoot it, because then you have to cycle all the way around, which I mean, like there's a little bit of a horror, like you're rummaging through your bag to like find the clip for your gun, and then the zombies like, descend on you.
Shaking as you put the clip in, and then,
you drop it. I mean, I get how that kind of ties in, but like, I was struggling with this because I was so frustrated by these controls, and I was like, I don't know how you would have done this better, because you have, use your weapon, use your special, and then you have cycle through weapon, cycle through special, and both shoulder buttons bring up the little like where are the victims map, like the radar. Mm-hmm. And I was like, maybe they could have like relegated that to the select button, and then L and R scrolled through inventory, but like, then how do you scroll through specials? Like it'd be weird if you did inventory with shoulder buttons and special with face buttons. I was like,
And then I agree. So two things. One, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is like, oh well, you can make the excuse of, oh well, you're rummaging through your bag, and then the experienced zombie hunter, somebody who's used to rummaging through their inventory, is better at it. You can definitely make that argument. And yes, I also thought about that. I was like, well, could it be done better? The answer, I agree with you, is no, not on this controller. So then the final question would be, is it necessary to have that many items? And honestly, I think yes. I mean, I think that one of the enjoyable things about the game is all of the different types of weapons that you can get and play with. There are some that I definitely think are repetitive, like the silverware,
Yeah, which is about the same power as it's a little bit more powerful than your squirt gun, but it's also way slower.
Right. And the way I kind of look at that is, and I may be wrong, I may be giving him too much credit and viewing it through nostalgia goggles. Whoa.
I'm super glad we don't do that every episode.
Yeah. You can just hear people and unsubscribe.
Unsubscribe. Patreon revoked.
All this is true, but is the way I kind of look at it is, you don't want to pick those up. Like picking those up is actually a bad thing. It prevents you from being an inventory hoarder. Like you don't like, yeah, you could be shoveling plates into your bag to perhaps use later, but that's not a good idea. So I actually would avoid the plates and knives and footballs because I didn't understand the point of the footballs either. But I'd avoid picking them up because I was just like, I'm never, unless I run out of squirt gun ammo. And if I have, I am in way worse of a situation than a football is going to get me out of. So yeah, I would actually avoid picking those up.
I did pump and dump. Like I would once I realized that they were like slower and only marginally more powerful, I would acquire them, and then every single enemy that I could kill with them, I would kill with them until I was out. Because when you pick up the plates, you get like 10.
Yeah.
It's not like a giant number. Whereas like when you pick up squirt gun, you get like 200 more shots, which is awesome. So
yeah.
So like you unless you're really firing like a guy who's about to be eaten by zombies, which I don't know why you would be doing in this game, you don't really run out of ammo for your primary weapon. Special weapons, certainly, but your primary weapon you're pretty safe with. So I would pick up the silverware or the plates, and then once I knew that they kind of sucked, I would just like burn them immediately just to preserve squirt gun ammo.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So yeah, but I do think one of the little things that hit me where I was like, oh, that's what that's for, was the soda cans. Like, for a while I was just like, oh well, it's an AoE, but it's such a crappy AoE, because it throws like a specific distance away from you, and it's really difficult to use. But you know what it can do? Go over walls.
Yes, I also realized that independently of you just saying that out loud
right now. Yeah, no.
Damn it.
To be fair, it was fairly like happenstance that I puzzled it out, and I didn't puzzle it out for years as a kid. But yeah, no, it's really cool because you can just sit there. If there's a whole bunch of Chucky dolls or whatever on the other side of a wall, you can just toss soda cans over the wall, and then it'll explode and take care of them, and then you can enter the room.
Yep. No, this is good. So there's like a little like open the kimono moment. Like there've been a couple times, and I wish I could think of specific examples, but there's been a couple times where after we recorded an episode, like I got enough insights from hearing your experiences and reflecting on my experiences that I then went and played the game again. And like that, that's
sure.
Yeah, I kind of like that. It's like, it's almost like, there's more here to, whatever the experience is, zombies in this case, like there's more to this experience than I was able to uncover in, the amount of time we had to dedicate to it. And this is a pretty fun game. And I have one and only one specific, like long-term complaint, which, we'll get to kind of toward the end, but like this is one of those games where I could see like just picking it up and like playing it a little. Like I understand why you played this a lot as a kid.
Yeah, no, I mean not to let people know, don't want to spoil the ending, don't jump ahead. But no, I mean it's really low key, it's really enjoyable. A couple of other mechanical things I did want to touch on before we get like towards the very end was one was is that I thought for the opening of cabinets and stuff that there was a good ratio of swag in there versus boogeymen,
and nothing. Some of them just have nothing.
Exactly, but I thought that ratio was good, so I never not opened something. I always opened all of the cabinets, know?
Well, because it's the Monty Hall problem. Like you have a 66% chance of victory, so you are heavily, or I should say, you have a 33% chance of victory, a 33% chance of nothing, and then a 33% chance of boogeyman. So it's like, well, shoot, 2 out of 3. Like, of course I'm going to chance that. And then when the boogeyman happens, you don't feel wronged. You're just like, shucks.
Yeah. I got by a boogeyman. And I had and so the same thing with the question mark potions,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that mechanic, especially because like I had this amazing, so, I've gotten a whole bunch of them. So they basically do the same thing as any of the items can do. Like some of them give you full health. Some of them turn you into the rage monster, whatever. Right. So I was holding on to one of them because I had no health packs left, and I had like a little bit of life left, and I was on my last life, right? And then and all I have is my question mark potion, and I was like, yes, okay, now is the time, because I don't know what it's gonna do, but I just saw this horde of, it was ants, this horde of like huge ants coming at me. I was like, this is it, and I chugged it. Turns out they can also damage you. So I just ate some damage and then got overrun by ants and died. But I had just enough time of the all is lost moment, where I was like, oh, I didn't know that they could also do this, and then death. But because again, like it only worst case sets you back a couple of levels. I was like, oh, all right, well, let's try again,
So I watched because I was curious, because I got about midway through, I guess. So I was curious about some of the like end game stuff. And I was like, I think if I had more time to put into this, I was like, this is a game I could beat. Like, I could eventually climb this mountain, but the hitbox is bad enough that it would take some time before I could climb that mountain all the way. And I was like, all right, I want to grab, like, this game feels like it's got some good speedrun videos. Like, I'm going to grab a speedrun video. And there's the couple times I used the question mark potion, it's just coincidence, I guess, but like it had the blue effect on me where I like turned blue. And I was like, I can't use my weapons. I can't use any items, and I'm blue. I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting out of this. So, do you know what that does?
It turns you into a ghost. And just makes you invincible, I thought.
You can walk on water.
No.
Yes.
Oh my,
yes. Yeah, so I'm watching the speed run, and the guy chugs the potion, and I was like, ha, what an idiot. That doesn't do anything. And then he just, because one of the levels is like 60% water.
Yeah, and nightmare to swim across because they got the things in it. Yeah.
Just goes flying across it on foot, and I was like, huh.
Intriguing. Yeah, no idea. Because there's also a blue potion that just does that.
Right, and I just coincidentally got it from the question mark potion like 3 times.
Right, which is fine. But yeah, I always assumed that was literally to just allow you safe passage around for a little bit. I would normally use it to, if I had no idea where the victim was, to go find them.
Right. Well, and this is a good mechanic, because in the hands of a novice or a beginner player, a journeyman, it allows you to escape a normal but otherwise punishing situation that you at your skill level are struggling with. And in the hands of an expert player, it allows you to essentially tell the game to get bent and run across the ocean and just like quickly grab, a few victims in the water level and then bamf off in the Toe Jam and Earl elevator.
Yes. And the one other thing that I wanted to touch on and I'm going to have to speculate on this a little bit because I never recognized a correlation when I was younger, and your statement at the beginning of the podcast has now caused me to question this, which is the number of victims per level, right? So I know for a fact that there were some levels that I started that only had 1 victim, right? But then when I was looking up passwords online, it was like, level 45, all 10 victims.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that? I don't know what that means. So now I'm starting to think that every victim that dies, you don't get that victim the next level. Like, you start the game with 10 victims, and if one dies, then you start the next level with 9 victims. And if one dies, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes me wonder if you eventually, if all the victims are taken, do you die? Do you game over? I actually don't know, because every time I died.
Oh, no. If you lose all your victims, it's game over.
Okay. So that might be part of the difficulty curve, is like you have 10, now you have 9, now you have 4, now you're dead.
Yeah. Which actually does give you a good reason to not just do like come up, get to level 5, get the password and move on. Because if you've only got the 1 victim, you may want to go back to level 1 and then preserve as many victims as you can. So I'm a little frustrated with myself for not recognizing any of this, because like I said, I just assumed that you started the levels with X or Y number of victims, and that there were fewer victims as you went along. But one of the things that happened to me, so first of all, I think that's a brilliant mechanic. I think it drastically increases the replay value of the game. But the other thing that does is it almost guarantees that at some point you are going to die, right?
Yes.
Because just diminishing returns. And one of the things I noticed is all of the levels that have passwords associated with them do a good job giving you stuff to beef you back out. So it's a good design gating mechanic because it's really difficult to say, like, well, how powerful is this player going to be at level 30 whatever, right? Well, if they've been playing it straight through, potentially godlike. They could have tons of weapons, tons of specials, tons of everything. But if you gate it in such a way where you're like, no, they're probably going to die at some point, then you can say, like, okay, well, now on the levels where they reboot to, we want to give them some stuff. We don't just want to like strand them so that way starting at level 26 is basically a death sentence.
So you've actually preempted the one mechanical complaint that I had alluded to a minute ago.
Starting at level 26 is a death sentence.
Well, just that when you use the password system, it brings you to that level, but with your starting loadout.
Right.
And so the first time I sat back down to play and I fired it up using my level 7 password, I was like, when I got to level 7 before, I had all kinds of amazing crap in my inventory. Like, who's this loser? And then when I did that at level 13 and then at level 19 or whatever it is, further and further along, I was like, this is hard. Like it's hard to not have all my stuff. But I think that in reality, I was not noticing these levels are pretty generous in the amount of equipment they're giving me because I just felt so wronged. Like I had 700 bullets in my squirt gun. Like, give me back my squirts.
Yeah, but I need and deserve this. And also too, those levels are pretty, from what I saw, they're really generous with leading you as well. So the one that I saw on was level 35 or something like that. It was, I remember the name of it though, was Zombie House Party.
Ooh, we didn't even mention every level has an adorable name.
Oh yeah, no, they're all the day, one of them was the day the Earth stood stupid. It's fantastic. No, this is true. Anyways, no, so yeah, so you bamf around, but so if you come into that level with all of your swag, you can clear it in 30 seconds because you can just blow down 2 walls, get to some of the victims, and then get GTFO. If you don't, then you can't get through those walls. So it leads you through kind of a mess, but that mess is full of stuff,
right?
So I was like, that's kind of, and so like I said, I really noticed it in that one level. So I can't say for sure that it was done in all those levels, but I think if they took that kind of care, that it would be relatively consistent. So you're not going to be beefed out like you were had you played 20 levels, but you're going to be able to play the game,
Right. Well, and it's the great leveler, right? It's sitting from the mightiest pharaoh to the lowliest peasant. Who doesn't enjoy a good sit? Because you could reverse that argument and say, I got to level, let's say 31, and then I died on level 32 because by the time I got to level 32, I was just so depleted of resources. So for that person, when they put in the level 31 password, they show up and they're like, oh, I don't have a bazooka to blow through this wall like I did a second ago. So now I have to go around and, oh, look, I have stuff again. I've got my med pack or whatever, my, magic cross. Now I can proceed through and have a little bit more of a fighting chance. So it would be a little bit of a debuff for a more experienced player, but it's probably a little bit of a leveler for a more novice player.
Right. And especially from the game designer standpoint, they can now be more reasonably assured as to what you're coming into the experience with, which is crucial. So
because you design for minimums. It's I know when they get to this fight, they're going to have at least this equipment because I put it in their way.
Right. And so, then then you can say and it'll be easier and easier if they played the game well. But if they just, I can say for sure that they have these things, because if they don't, then they're playing so poorly that they need to die and try again because they shouldn't have gotten this far.
If they don't, they're playing so poorly that they need to die.
Yes. Hashtag game development.
What do you call it? A humanitarian design, or humane?
Humane.
This is not a humane design.
No. Well, actually, hilariously, I would make the argument that killing the players swiftly, if they have screwed up so bad that they can't progress, is the humane design.
Well, yeah.
Like
but when
making
when you phrase it as killing them is humane.
Anyways, sociopathy aside, overall, man, did it hold up for you?
So I'm going to give this a nostalgia monocle purely for the hitbox.
Yeah,
Like
just
if it wasn't,
pass it.
I mean, I could master it. Like I could learn the idiosyncrasies of the east-west shot versus the north-south shot, but it was annoying enough that I was just a couple times I was like, okay, I just died or I got hit or I wasted a bunch of like a good weapon because I was like a pixel off. And I get it. It's like, yeah, it's a pixel bounded box, but it felt like it went too close to the character based on the way the visuals were displayed to me. Right. Like if I missed because I just missed and it like went sailing over their head, then I'd be like, I suck at this. But when it feels like it passed through their shoulder and yet they took no damage, I was just like, like that. I don't like that feeling in game playing. But to be fair, there are weapons that have like a larger area of effect. There are not a lot of circumstances where you can't get into a north-south alignment if you just wanted to. So it's not a fantastic workaround, but I was like, yeah, if this is my biggest complaint, that it's hard to miss a thing or it's hard to hit a thing that's trying to eat my face because it wants to not get shot, but it does want to eat my face. Like that's yeah, okay. Like this fits within the universe and the expectations I should have. So hitbox aside, I would absolutely recommend this to someone. Like the music is so delightful. I'd recommend just watching like a speed run of it just to listen to the level music.
Yeah, no, the music's fantastic. For me, I would because again, and you kind of touched on it, is that I don't. There are enough workarounds to the crappy hitbox that it just didn't really. I knew it was like not great, but honestly, like I said, like you've got the Holy Cross, you've got. You do have your squirt gun, which is super helpful, but there's like enough other weapons, and especially most of the time, to be honest, I didn't directly engage enemies aside from zombies. I just run away from them, So I didn't feel that to me that did not hamper gameplay enough to say that it was an actual problem. But yeah, I would definitely I'd say this is absolutely worth a play. I mean, it's not. The hitbox isn't as perfect as like, let's say if you were like wielding a sword instead of like your squirt gun, like a non-ranged weapon, but like some heroes do throughout time. But yeah, aside from that, man, I absolutely think they held up personally. I would totally recommend this game. I would especially recommend this game to somebody who liked those types of horror movies. So if somebody grew up watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, all of those like old B type movies, this would be something I'd be like, give this a play. This game is enjoyable, it's delightful, it's fun, and also you in particular will appreciate it.
Now that we've made this mistake once with like an opportunity for a holiday themed game, we're gonna have to put some serious thought into what we're gonna do for our Thanksgiving game and our Arbor Day game.
Yes, Arbor Day. Oh man, I can't even think about what you would do like with some kind of like forest thing. Like a hero that would start off in a forest,
like some kind of like Lost Woods.
The curtain falls. The music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself, the fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the end of a smile.